Hello, people. My name's Rick Yampert. I am the author of Crows and Ravens, Mystery, Myth, and Magic of Sacred Corvids, my new book on Llewellyn, from Llewellyn. And today my topic is going to be Crows and Ravens in Antiquity, the Birth of Corvid Magic. Um, as that Seinfeld guy might say, what's the deal with crows and ravens? Well, here's what some 17,000 to 19,000 years ago, a human or many humans ventured deep inside Lascaux Cave in what is modern day France. And they painted these just marvelous, stupendous, Picasso esque, Van Gogh esque uh, images of horses, mammoths, deer, all these animals, except in Lascaux, that's Lascaux, there is one human or human like figure. It's what's called a therianthrope, which is a human animal hybrid. And some observers, many observers, believe that it is actually a crow headed shaman. It's the earliest evidence we have of how long crows and their cousins, the ravens, and they're both part of the family of birds known as corvids. That's the scientific name. But Lascaux Cave is the earliest evidence we have that crows and ravens were glamoring, enchanting, mesmerizing humankind. Crows and ravens are as intelligent as apes and dolphins, and far more intelligent to people who are pet owners. Um, in my book, I cite wildlife biologist John Marsliff, and he calls corvids, quote, feathered apes. They are the most intelligent animals that most people will ever encounter. I don't live anywhere near apes or gorillas. I'm near the Atlantic Ocean in Palm Coast, Florida, but I see dolphins out at sea occasionally. But crows, there are no ravens in Florida, but the crows come to my backyard every day. Um, Crows and ravens are in every continent except Antarctica. You will see them in backyards in Iowa. You will see them on balconies in New York City. You will see them at the Tower of London, in India, Scandinavia, the forest of the Rocky Mountains. They're everywhere. Uh, they are the most magical animals that most people will have a chance of encountering. Um, as evidenced in myths and legends and even historical accounts, the uncanny abilities and behaviors of crows and ravens have led cultures around the world for centuries to regard these birds as supernatural creatures, as emissaries from the gods, goddesses, and the other realms. The ancient Norse, the Vikings, the Celts, Native Americans, the ancient Hebrews, Tibetans, all these cultures have peoples who forge mystical connections to corvids. Well, and there's plenty of contemporary accounts of people who have had strange and eerie encounters and magical manifestations from these birds. Uh, at the most basic level, just observing crows and ravens will remind one that nature, the earth, the universe are far more fascinating than most people realize. For me and others on a pagan spiritual path, crows and ravens are sacred creatures. They are, for me, they are the living embodiment of an aspect of Gaia, the great earth goddess. If you forge communion with corvids, whether through observations, various exercises, meditation, spell work, or rituals, there's some of that in my book. You will find palpable ways to peek behind the veil that separates us humans and our daily lives from the mysteries of the natural world. I say that these creatures offer portals, quote unquote, into directly experiencing the sacredness and magical aspect of nature, and they open us to a deeper relationship with Gaia by attuning ourselves to the supernatural abilities of corvids. It's what I call we can alter our consciousness, ALTER, so that we can alter, ALTAR, our consciousness and open our third eye and access the divine realms. Why? Because these birds have these uncanny supernatural abilities that are there for us to observe, often in our backyards. Okay, next slide, please. What you see here is that image I was talking about, the Lascaux Birdman Shaman. Um, This, as you see, this was 17 to 19,000 years ago. This image was created. Uh, the other animals in Lascaux are very poetically, beautifully rendered, and yet the Birdman Shaman is very crude. I mean, as you can see, it looks like a kindergarten figure. The bison that you see to the right has been pierced by a spear. Its entrails are spilling out. As you see, the Birdman Shaman, um, it's got a bird head. It's what's called ichthyphallic, which means it has an erection. And then there's this curious bird on a staff right beside the figure. Uh, do we know that this is a crow? No, we don't know specifically. Um, but I mentioned John Marsliff, who is like the crow expert. Uh, he and many others theorized that indeed this is a crow or raven. And part of Marsliff's estimation uh, to of why this is a corvid is that even at these times, crows and ravens would have become associated with death in the minds of the Paleolithic people. Uh, that association was fostered because crows and ravens, they're omnivores. They will eat anything. I feed them movie theater butter flavored popcorn in my backyard, but they will feed on carrion and even human corpses. So, what's going on with the Crow Man and his crow staff? The theories fall into two main categories. One is that this depicts a dead or wounded man involved in a hunting incident. And then the second major line of theories is that there is some sort of shamanic trance happening here. Um, Regardless of which of those two tracks, I'm going to quote, there was a filmmaker, Mario Ruspoli. You can't go into Lascaux these days. It was discovered in, I think, the 1940s or 1950s. Humans started going in, and of course, just our presence started to make the images deteriorate. So it's closed today, but they will let scientists and special give special permission. Anyway, an Italian filmmaker who went in to document it back in the 1960s, he's claimed, and I quote, that the site was, quote, charged with occult power. And that's really very easy to see, I think. Some anthropologists theorize the bird crowman scene and other cave paintings depict sympathetic or imitative magic. So that's saying uh, my background is a journalist. I worked as an arts and entertainment writer. So when we say that this depicts a hunting incident, it's not that it's a news report saying, "Oh, here's what happened to one of our hunters." They believe one line of thinking is that this is sympathetic or imitative hunting magic, meaning that whatever you happens in a scene or creation that you depict will in turn affect what happens in real life. Um, Later, the ancient Celts and Norse would readily note the eerie and unnerving appearance of crows and ravens uh, swooping down in the aftermath of battle scenes across Europe. And so most observers believe that is how this um, corvids came to be connected and associated with death. So maybe this is sympathetic magic that they painted this so that they would, which would mean that the crow shaman is not actually dead, but he's helping to draw food to the tribe so they can kill and eat. However, mythologist Joseph Campbell writes in his book, The Way of the Animal Powers, uh, he notes that bird imagery and motifs often have a shamanic context. Trancing shamans often ride birds to the otherworld realms. Shamans shapeshift into bird forms. This is cultures around the world. Campbell concludes that Lascaux, the Birdman, is not a hunter killed by his prey, but instead is a shaman deep in trance. Another writer, anthropologist, Robert Ryan, writes in The Strong Eye of Shamanism that the Lascaux scene depicts a shaman in, quote, trance, death, and transformation. Um, there's some other theories about Lascaux. There was a British ornithologist writing in the 1950s. He writes that this scene depicts a representation of the external soul. Frankly, I don't know quite what the hell he means by that. I think he thinks that the bird on the staff is a cult object. I just note that to say that there are other theories. There's another theory that two British scientists believe, and they wrote this in a scientific journal, that this scene, and again, I don't understand this, that it depicts star constellations, and Lascaux actually may commemorate. They say maybe may commemorate a comet striking the Earth around 15,200 BCE. So whatever is going on in Lascaux, Richard Leakey, the famous anthropologist, he says it's imbued with meaning, but we can't decipher what is being said. Um, the potency is palpable, but we are culturally blind to its content. But what we do know is that deep in Lascaux Cave, we likely have encountered the world's earliest known instance of crow magic. Next slide, please, Anna. Um, when I discovered the Lascaux Cave, um, when I was researching my book, and yeah, I was kind of surprised and shocked uh, about the Lascaux image. But then I went on a quest to find the earliest mention of crows or ravens in the world's literature, and it turns out it's in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which happens to be the world's oldest epic literature. Um, Dating the Epic of Gilgamesh is a bit tricky. Fragments were date back to 2100 BCE, BCE meaning before Common Era. Gilgamesh seems to be a historical figure. He was a king associated with the Sumerian city-state of Uruk, U-R-U-K. He's mentioned in old historical records. However, those records say that a number of kings in those times lived to be 18,000 to 43,000 years. So those records are obviously combine the fanciful and the factful. Gilgamesh poems were written in the Sumerian language dating back to 2100 BCE. That became source material for an epic written in the Akkadian language around 1800 BCE. A later so-called standard version of Gilgamesh was compiled by a Babylonian priest around 1300 BCE, and a copy of that work dating to 600 BCE was discovered in 1853, again on clay tablets in what is modern-day northern Iraq. Gilgamesh has numerous adventures with the goddess Ishtar, the god Anu. He and his companion Indiku fight the bull of heaven. So it is an epic adventure. But after Indiku is killed, Gilgamesh is grieving, and he goes to see this wise couple, a man and his wife, who were the only humans to survive the Great Flood. And again, this is in the Epic of Gilgamesh. This couple had saved all the animal life by building a giant ark, and therefore they were granted eternal life by the gods for their efforts. Um, but it is this wise man that Gilgamesh goes to see, and the wise man lets Gilgamesh know. It's in the epic. He said, this is the wise man speaking. I loosed a raven. She saw that the waters had retreated after the great flood. She ate, she flew around, she cawed, but she did not come back. So that's kind of a generic mention. And, the raven, I don't know if you can hear the crows. They're back here in my backyard in Palm Coast. Anyway, so there's no magical attributes in this account of Gilgamesh, but the takeaway is the first mention of a corvid is actually in the world's most ancient surviving epic literature. So I find that kind of remarkable. Next slide, please. If that account of the flood sounds kind of familiar, it predates the Christian Old Testament account of the flood. And scholars pretty much seem to think that Gilgamesh did influence the Hebrew Old Testament account of Noah and the flood. This leads me to a volume called The Legends of the Jews, which was compiled and translated in 1909 by a Lithuanian rabbi named Louis Ginsburg. And he got source material from the 2nd to the 14th century and translated. Again, the title of his book is The Legends of the Jews. And I just love, I had to read this when I came across this in my research. I had to read this passage like 10 times. I'm going to read you just one of the Raven accounts from Ginsburg. Anyway. Noah had experienced difficulty all along in ascertaining the state of the waters. When he desired to dispatch the raven, the bird said, "The Lord thy master hates me, and thou dost hate me too. Thy master hates me, for he bade me take 7 pairs of the clean animals into the ark, and but 2 pairs of the unclean animals to which I belong. Thou hatest me, for thou dost not choose as a messenger a bird or of one of the kinds of which there are 7 pairs in the ark. You send me, and of my kind there is but 1 pair. Suppose now I should perish by reason of cold or heat. Would not the world be the poorer by a whole species of animals?" And this is the raven talking. "Or can it be that you have cast a lustful eye upon my mate, and you desire to get rid of me?" Whereunto Noah made answer and said, "Wretch, I must live apart from my wife in the ark. How much less would such thoughts occur to my mind as thou give to me?" The raven had no success. He did go out, and Ginsburg relates that when he saw the body of a dead man, the raven set to work on devour it, and he just told Noah, F off. But I love that tale. What's one of the takeaways from this tale? The character of the raven, and this is from Jewish texts from the 2nd century to the 14th century CE, Common Era. But the character of the raven very, very is almost exactly like the character of Raven the Trickster that you will find in Native American tales of the Pacific Northwest coast. Raven is a trickster. He's greedy. He's lustful. He talks. He has human speech. He's always looking out for himself. One of his superpowers in the Native American tales, he can make his poop and piss talk. What a superpower. go Raven. Yes. Um, but that to me says something about this consistency, literally across centuries, of how humans have characterized ravens. Next slide, please. There is an historical figure, uh, uh, Marcus Valerius Corvus. He is actually documented as having existed, and he appears in the Roman historian Livy, who lived in the first century BCE, wrote his History of Rome that chronicles the tales of Romulus and Remus, the rape of the Sabine women, and all these other legends of Rome. But he also relates the tale of Marcus Valerius. The Roman army was going into a battle against the Gauls of northern Italy, and one of the Gaulish warriors challenged the one of the Romans to single one-on-one combat. And so Marcus Valerius accepted this challenge. And according to Livy, as these two single soldiers were about to battle while the armies stayed on the sidelines watching, a crow appeared and helped Marcus Valerius defeat the Gaul. The crow would be pecking and flapping its wings at the Gaulish warrior. Marcus Valerius dispatched the Gaulish warrior. So it wasn't really a one-on-one contest. It was 2-on-1. So Marcus Valerius killed the Gaul, and then the full armies went at it, and history tells us that the Roman armies won. And this is recorded again in Livy in his History of Rome. And because of this, Marcus Valerius had the word corvus added to his name. And corvus is Latin for corvid, which means crows or ravens. So yeah, what are we supposed to make of this? Livy had the fanciful and the factual in his writings. But whether even if you're skeptical about that this incident really happened, to me, one of the big takeaways here is that, again, academic historians accept the existence of Marcus Valerius Corvus. So, thus, Livy's story is one of the earliest stories, if not history's first story of crow magic happening to a real life human. Uh, and it would not be the last. Next slide, please. I'm just going to show you some images. I take photos of the crows behind my home. I put some digital woo-woo on them, not AI, not Photoshop. But for me, my crow art is a way of expressing the magical, supernatural aspect of these animals. Next slide, please. And just again, another one of my crow arts. All these are based on photos that I took. And the next slide, please. And this one I titled Mr. Crow Eavesdrops on the Witch's Sabbath. Again, I title a lot of my crow art after pagan or witchy themes. So yes, Corvid Magic is still happening. I'm looking at some of these questions here. I see from Courtney Brady, is this like the first tales of corvids being in more of a positive light? Yeah, there are plenty of positive tales of crows and ravens. In the ancient Norse, in my book, I cover the ancient Norse, the Celts, and the Native Americans extensively. And even in the Norse, ravens could be seen as harbingers of death, but also omens of success in battles. So the Norse had this, and I'm generalizing here, they had this strong sense of valor and honor. And so they when they created their raven banners, they would paint an image of ravens on flags, and if they were heading into battles on their ships, if the flags are flapping, that means they're going to be successful in battle. If the flag was drooping, not a good sign. But I still haven't been able to figure out that if the flag, the Raven banner, was not flapping, they would still go into battle. That was their creed and their ethic. So um, again, I've had people tell me, it's like, oh, I don't know about crows and ravens. I had a friend say, I don't like crows and ravens. I saw it take down a dove. They are omnivores. I guess we could get into that whole Disney circle of life thing, death, life, da 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 da, which is certainly valid. So to me, crows are a realistic reflection of how life plays out for humans and corvids and flora and fauna in this world. Uh, I'm seeing in the chat a lot of you have corvid encounters. Um, geez, that's why I wrote the book, and there's just so much. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm seeing questions in the chat, comments. I would like to read them all later. People are constantly telling me, "Oh, this happened, this happened, this happened." So one thing I would say, if you want to have crow encounters, of course, feed them food, glorious food. They recognize human faces. They especially remember those who have given them favor, and they remember those who have been aggressive or harmful toward them. Not only will an individual crow or raven remember that about a specific person, but again, John Marsleff, the wildlife biologist, he's the Mr. Crow guy. He has done experiments that have proven that if you mess with a crow, that crow is going to tell other crows that didn't even see you mess with that crow. That crow is going to tell other crows, and your name is going to be mud among crows because they're able to communicate. Hey, don't go by this guy Joe Wakawua's place because he's mean to crows. So be careful if you want to cultivate a relationship with them. I'm still learning about crows. It's going to be a lifeline study, a lifelong study, a lifelong pursuit. And I wish you all well. I I'm going to put my email in the chat, and feel free to uh, email me questions. And I'm also on Facebook. Um, so feel free, Rick Yampert. You can see that's my name on the book. And feel free to send me a Facebook message, friend request, or communicate to me by email. Blessings to you all. I say ka, ka.